Notre Dame is gearing up for a championship run in 2026. Tyler Wojciak of Locked On Irish is here to discuss the transfer portal, because how else would one prepare for a championship run, Tyler, other than the transfer portal? We shall forget the ending to Notre Dame's season and the fallout that came from such matters. We're looking forward. I am nothing if not optimistic, positive, forward-thinking, and other great adjectives. So, what's your assessment right now of Notre Dame's transfer portal haul?
I thought they did a really good job this year. They're never going to be a team like Indiana who brings in 30 guys in a cycle. They typically take in around 8 to maybe 10 max, but that's how they operate. As Marcus Freeman likes to say, he wants a program that is going to major in high school recruiting and then minor in the transfer portal, basically as a way of saying they're going to supplement any needs where they see fit. And this year, I think they brought in some guys who are going to impact the team right away, as well as some young undergraduate transfers who, I think they'll make an impact in 2026, but there's a lot of long-term upside as well. And that's been rare for Notre Dame. In the past, they've typically only been able to take grad transfers, just given all the academic restrictions at Notre Dame. I understand why people like to give Notre Dame grief, but they are one of the few schools left who actually try to be a school when it comes to their student athletes. And it's been a bit of a thorn in the side, but I think this cycle with the players they added, like Francis Brew from Pittsburgh at defensive tackle, he's going to be a day one starter. They brought in two former Ohio State wide receivers, Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter, two former 5-stars. So they're bringing in guys who can impact the team right away, but also guys who just have a ton of upside down the road.
Quincy Porter, one of the biggest names of this transfer portal cycle, and I think depending on who you ask, you could classify him as a surprise. You could say it was going to happen once they landed Chris Henry, and they've got Jeremiah Smith coming back as well. It's an embarrassment of riches at the wide receiver position over in Columbus. But for Notre Dame, I don't think it's been a huge position of strength over the last couple of years. It's been fine. It's been solid, good enough, and I'm a big CJ Carr fan. I feel pretty bullish about Notre Dame going into next season. Do you think they have upgraded their pass-catching unit significantly for their young stud quarterback?
Well, it's tough to say because they lose Malachi Fields, and he was exceptional for the Irish this season. They didn't need him quite as much as maybe some other top-tier transfer portal wide receivers because they had Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price in the backfield. But man, Malachi Fields, who transferred over from Virginia for one season, was really, really effective for the Irish this year. I don't know if Graham or Porter can come in and contribute in the same way that Malachi Fields did, but you think if you're going to lose one guy, Malachi Fields, and you can replace him with two young, talented guys in Graham and Porter, then maybe that'll work out. I have questions about Porter just in terms of his health. He had that weird undisclosed knee injury at Ohio State that kept him out for most of the second half of the season. He missed the college football playoff as well. There's been some conflicting reports about whether he had knee surgery or not. So I'm trying to temper my expectations for what he can contribute in 2026. But if he even scratches the surface of his potential, then he could be as good as Malachi Fields or even better.
For the Irish going into next year, is there anything left? Because remember, you can enter the portal in a window, you can exit it in June for all anybody cares, or at least that's the way that it seems to be, which I don't understand. I mean, I don't understand a lot of things about college football and college sports right now, and we'll see if it gets fixed in the coming days, but is there anything left that you feel like, boy, if they went out and added a player or two at this position, it would make sense?
Backup quarterback, for sure, because Kenny Minchey was the backup this past season, and now he's getting over $2 million to be the starting quarterback in Kentucky. That's a pretty good backup quarterback to have in your room. And I was just hoping that Notre Dame could figure out whatever you guys got going on over at Oregon, where you're able to convince Dylan Raiola, who just started his first 2 seasons at Nebraska, to then come over to Oregon and be a backup in the same way that you did with Dante Moore, although he only had 1 season as a starter compared to 2 with Dylan. But next year, you go in with CJ Carr as your guy. Obviously, he's already number 2 in the preseason Heisman favorite, so you've got your main guy. But then behind him, you've got a redshirt freshman in Blake Hebert, and then a true freshman in Noah Grubbs, and then another true freshman in Teddy Girard, who is actually reclassifying into 2026. So you've got one guy who you can really count on, but man, if CJ Carr goes down, there's a lot of questions in that quarterback room.
Alberto Mendoza is not an option. He made his way to Georgia Tech. I'll probably talk about that tomorrow on show, but are there any options available? I'd watch maybe for Parker Navarro if he gets another year of eligibilities, trying to transfer from Ohio and play another season of college football. We're waiting on a lot of those lawsuits to play themselves out to see if they become available. I don't know if somebody like that who would only have one season left would want to go be a backup at Notre Dame. You'd essentially be, and this sounds dark, I'm not saying that anybody would, but you'd essentially in the back of your mind be hoping for an injury to CJ Carr, and then you would be handed the keys of a team that's trying to go win a national championship. And then that's the expectation. That's the roster that they're likely going to have. So do you think, are there any quarterbacks you have an eye on that make you go, I think he'd be a perfect candidate?
At this point, no. I've looked around. I always felt like if they were going to add someone, it would be either group of five or maybe even the FCS route, try to redo whatever Trinidad Chambliss did over at Ole Miss. But look, that is an outlier situation, right?
Yeah.
Notre Dame actually hosted Braden Atkinson, former quarterback for Mercer, on campus for a visit, but I'm not even sure that they offered him. And he wasn't necessarily the type that you were kind of expecting. I thought Notre Dame would go after a guy who's experienced, been playing college football for 3 years. Atkinson started in his one and only season at Mercer, put up a bunch of really good numbers, but still, it's Mercer going over to Notre Dame, and he only had one season of college football. So I think they were out there looking for an experienced quarterback, and the right situation just never presented itself, and it looks like they're going into 2026 with CJ Carr and just hoping to God that he stays healthy.
It turns out having a good offensive line that can keep your quarterback upright is indeed important. Atkinson, by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, wound up at Oregon State. And he and Malik Murphy are going to battle it out, because I thought for sure Malik Murphy would have been a guy that winds up in the portal again for the 2026 cycle. And last I'd heard, he's still hanging out over there in Corvallis. That would have been the perfect type of option for Notre Dame. But I'll get you out of here on this. Of the guys they've brought in via the portal, and there is this discussion with Notre Dame, Stanford as well, as still being premier Northwestern elite academic schools. Andrew Luck has gone in and dropped the guardrails in Palo Alto to allow for transfers to actually come in, because if you don't, I think you're just at such a big disadvantage now. Who do you think is the best transfer that Notre Dame has brought in so far?
I'm going to take Francis Brew from Pittsburgh. He fulfills a huge position of need for Notre Dame. It was looking like they were going to be without their top 4 defensive tackles from this past season due to guys heading off to the NFL. Now, fortunately, one of those guys, Jason Onye, was granted a 6th year of eligibility literally 10 minutes before we started recording today. And that is literally as big as any portal addition they could have had, because he was starting throughout the second half of that season. So they bring him back, which is huge. And then they add Francis Brew from Pittsburgh, who was really, really good for the Panthers this past season. And when Notre Dame played them, he was wrecking the line of scrimmage. And Notre Dame has had a tendency to add ACC players after they play them. Like Malachi Fields had a pretty good game against Notre Dame when he was in Virginia. He was on Notre Dame's roster next year. Jared Dawson, the defensive tackle at Louisville, had a good game. He joined the team the next year. So now it's like every time an ACC player has a good game against Notre Dame, I'm like, could he be on the team next year? I personally was hoping that they would go after Hollywood Smothers, the running back in the transfer portal. It didn't happen, but I think Francis Brew is exactly what they need. A guy who's very disruptive on the interior, had 7.5 tackles for loss this season, is like one of the strongest humans alive. He was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list, squats nearly 700 pounds. I'm not even sure how that's humanly possible, but he does it. So he's going to be a great addition to that Notre Dame defense for next season.
Every ACC coach, be on high alert when you play Notre Dame. You got to have that scene from The Incredibles where Dash is running in the track race, and they say, okay, yeah, go. No, you're showing too much of your power there. No, back it up. Okay, no, you can go a little bit forward. That gets second place. That's the goal. That's the goal if you're an ACC team playing Notre Dame. Tyler Wojciak, Locked On Irish, great, as always.